What happens when a symbol of pure hope falls into a universe that has forgotten the meaning of mercy? And can hope survive where even gods are weapons? The void screams before the light arrives. 1 billion warships drift like iron coffins across the stars, their hulls scarred by 10,000 years of endless war. Prayers echo through the warp, not whispered but screamed, as humanity begs a corpse god on a golden throne to keep the darkness at bay for one more day. In this future, there is no peace, there is no kindness, there is only survival. And then without warning a new sun ignites between the stars. Not a star born of fusion and gravity, but of will. Superman crashes into the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Like a miracle that reality itself tries to reject, his arrival shreds the Imperium, a shockwave of impossible order rippling through the warp. Demons recoil, shrieking in agony as if something ancient and hated has returned. Astropaths across the Imperium clutch their eyes and scream, blinded by a light that does not burn, but judges. Clark Kent opens his eyes in the vacuum of space and immediately knows something is wrong. The stars feel angry. He hears it before he understands it. Pain layered over pain, entire civilizations crying out at once. His senses stretch farther than they ever have across sectors, across battlefields where children are turned into soldiers, where faith is enforced at the barrel of a bolter, where hope is heresy unless sanctioned by a distant throne. This universe is loud with suffering, and for the first time in his life, Superman hesitates. "What happened?" he whispers, though no one is there to hear him. Far below, an Imperial Navy battlegroup locks onto the impossible energy signature. Admiral Voss stares at the hololith in disbelief as augurs fail and machine spirits panic. A humanoid figure floats calmly at the epicenter of a warp anomaly that should not exist. No Jellifield, no corruption, no madness. In the Emperor's name, Voss breathes. That thing is alive. Orders are barked. Weapons charge. In this galaxy, you do not wait for the unknown to speak. The first land strike slams into Superman with the force of a dying star. It would have annihilated a continent. Kleck doesn't even flinch, but he feels it. Not the impact, the intent. Fear. Indoctrinated terror, disguised as duty. He turns toward the fleet, eyes glowing, not with rage, but with confusion. "Please," he says softly, amplifying his voice through vacuum and void alike. "I don't want to fight." On Terra, the golden throne shudders. The Emperor of mankind, half dead and half awake, feels something he has not felt in 10 millennia. A presence, untainted by chaos, unbound by faith, unbroken by time. For the first time since the Horus heresy, his psychic scream pauses. Hope. In the eye of terror, the chaos gods turn their attention as one. Korn snarls, Tazianch laughs, Nurgle frowns, Slaanesh goes silent. Something has entered the game that does not play by their rules. And Superman, Last Son of Krypton, champion of a brighter tomorrow, looks out at a galaxy that does not believe in tomorrows at all. If he stays, will he be their savior? Or will this universe break even him? What if the very act of showing mercy in this universe is seen not as strength but as the greatest possible threat? The second volley never comes. Superman hovers in place, hands open, capes drifting like a living banner against the stars, while the Imperial fleet hesitates. Targeting runes flicker. Mishan Spirots argue with their handlers. Vox screams overlapping with Bin-Herrick shrieks as logic engines fail to classify what they are seeing. A being of immense power, yes, but one who does not radiate warp corruption, whose presence actively calms the Imperium instead of stirring it. That alone makes him an impossibility. Hold fire. Admiral Voss finally snaps, his voice shaking despite decades of war. By the throne. Hold fire. Superman exhales slowly, the tension easing from his shoulders. He glides closer, deliberately slow, giving them every chance to strike again if they choose. He can hear the heartbeats on the bridge, smell recycled air and cold sweats through meters of adamantium. These aren't monsters, he realizes. They're people. People trapped inside a nightmare that taught them fear was the same thing as faith. "I'm not your enemy," he says, his voice resonating through every At once, "I'm here to help." Silence answers him, then laughter, not from the fleet, but from the warp itself. A ripple of unreality coils nearby, colors bleeding into wrong shapes as a rent opens in space. Demons claw their way through, howling, in rage as Superman's presence scorches them like sunlight on diseased flesh. Bloodletters burst into ash a Lord of Change shrieks as its wings unravel into nothingness. Superman moves without thinking. He is everywhere at once, hands catching demons. Momentum reversed, warp entities torn apart, not with hatred but with precision. He doesn't enjoy it. That's what unsettles the watching Imperials most. He fights like someone extinguishing a fire, not like a warrior seeking glory. Each blow is final. Each act is restrained. Within seconds, the incursion is gone. The warp seals itself, reluctant, like a wound forced closed by a will stronger than reality's own. On the bridge, several officers fall to their knees. A living saint, someone whispers, an angel of the Emperor. Superman hears it, winces. No, he says firmly, I'm not an angel, and I don't want to be worshipped. That single sentence sends a psychic tremor across the Imperium. On Terra, the High Lords erupt into chaos. Astropaths scream conflicting visions. Some see salvation, others see apocalypse. The ecclesiarchy brands the being a test of faith. The Inquisition, ever vigilant, comes to a single chilling conclusion. Anything this powerful that does not bow to the Emperor must be destroyed. Deep beneath the Imperial Palace, the Emperor watches through fractured senses. He feels Superman's mind brush against the suffering of humanity and recoil in horror. His being is not hardened by endless war. He still believes suffering is wrong. That alone makes him dangerous, because hope changes people. Superman lands on the hull of an Imperial cruiser, boots denting ceramite as if it were clay. He kneels, lowering himself to eye level with terrified deckhands who stare at him through armored viewports. You don't have to be afraid, he says gently. No one does. But fear is all they know. Somewhere in the darkness, an Inquisitor signs an order that will doom entire systems if necessary. Somewhere else, a space marine, chapter master, tightens his gauntlet, torn between reverence and duty. And in the warp, the chaos gods lean closer, realizing with dawning fury that this being does not feed them. Superman looks out across the galaxy again, and finally understands the scale of what he's walked into. Saving one world here won't be enough. He will have to challenge the very idea that this future cannot be better, and the universe is already preparing to prove him wrong. What if the greatest hero in the universe decides to save humanity from itself? Fan learns that humanity will kill to stop him. The first planet Superman saves is not a battlefield, but more than anything, it answers a distress signal, drifting half lost through the warp. A dying astropathic cry soaked in terror and resignation. The world is an agri planet on the Imperium's fringe. Its sky is choked with smog from centuries of over-harvesting. Its people bent under tithe quotas that demand grain at the cost of starvation. Raiders from the warp descend without warning, cultists and mutated horrors tearing through settlements, while the local PDF collapses within hours. Superman arrives like a falling star. He stops orbital bombardment at mid-descent, catching macro shells with his bare hands and lowering them harmlessly into empty fields. He disarms cultists faster than they can scream, freezing weapons, shattering armor, snapping chains without breaking body. When a possessed warlord charges him, frothing prayers to dark gods, Superman grips the creature's skull and burns the corruption out with heat vision so fine it leaves the host alive. Sobbing, suddenly free, the fighting ends in minutes. The people gather in silence as he lands among them. They expect demands, declarations, judgment. Instead, he helps them rebuild. He lifts collapsed hab blocks. He purifies poisoned water. He listens. Mothers tell him of children taken for tithes. Old men speak of famines declared acceptable losses. A young girl asks him, voice trembling, if the sky will ever be blue again. Superman doesn't know how to answer that. I'll try, he says. And for the first time in decades, someone believes it. Word spreads faster than the Imperium can contain it, not through official channels, but through whispers, through soldiers who saw a god bleed for them, through refugees who speak of a man in blue who asks for nothing. Shrines are erected overnight, then torn down by local priests who declare them heretical. The people build them again anyway. Hope is contagious, and the Imperium panics. The Inquisition arrives 3 days later. Black ships descend, blotting out the sun. Inquisitor Lord Hulbricht steps onto scorched soil, his rosette gleaming, his gaze cold. He surveys the healed world with revulsion. No mass executions, no purges, no sanctioned fear. This is not compliance, he snarls. This is sedition. Superman meets him outside the governor's palace. He doesn't float this time. He stands on the ground like everyone else. These people were dying, Clark says. I helped them. You undermined imperial authority, Halbrecht replies. You offered them false hope. Superman frowns. Hope isn't false if it's real. Halbrecht smiles thinly and signals his retinue. Grey Knights teleport into existence, weapons humming with psychic wards, their very presence a hammer against the soul. Superman feels it immediately, the Emperor's design. Anti-demon warriors tuned to annihilate warp entities. They feel nothing from him. Confusion ripples through their ranks. He's not corrupted, one of them whispers. That makes him worse. Halbrecht snaps. Firebolters roar. Psychic blades strike. Superman doesn't retaliate. He shields civilians, instead, taking blows that crater the ground. He pleads with them to stop. He begs. They call it proof of deception. When he finally disarms them, gently but decisively, Halbrecht draws a digital weapon aimed not at Superman, but at the crowd. Submit, the Inquisitor says, finger tightening, or they die in your name. Superman freezes. For the first time since arriving in this universe, he feels it. Rage. Not explosive, but cold, focused, terrifyingly controlled. He steps forward, eyes blazing. No, he says quietly. This ends now. He dismantles the inquisitorial force in seconds. No deaths, no mercy requested, only enforced. When it's over, Halbrecht lies pinned beneath steel and stone, staring up at a being who could crush him effortlessly. You can't win, the Inquisitor gasps. The Imperium will never allow you. Superman looks around at the people he saved, at their fear, their fragile hope. Then the Imperium needs to change, he says. On Terra, alarms scream as reports flood in. A being who defies the Inquisition and lives. A savior that people listen to more than the throne. And deep within the Golden Throne, the Emperor makes a decision he has not made in millennia. He reaches out, not with command, but with a question. What if the god humanity worships finally speaks, and the Man of Steel is the only one who can hear him? The voice does not thunder, it whispers. Superman staggers mid-flight, hand pressing to his temple as the galaxy seems to fold inward. For an instant, every sound dies, the screams of the warp, the grind of war, the prayers soaked in blood. In their place comes a presence so vast it should crush him, yet so restrained it barely breathes. You are not of this universe. Clef closes his eyes, drifting above a wounded world that watches him like a miracle afraid to blink. No, he answers silently. But I'm here now. The Emperor of mankind has not spoken to another mind this clearly since Melchador died. What remains of him shattered, bound, decaying, an eternal steadies Superman with an intensity that bends causality. He sees no warp signature, no psychic's echo, no hunger for worship, only an impossible alignment of power and compassion. You disrupt the balance, the Emperor says. Hope is a weapon here, one I buried for a reason, because you were afraid of what it would cost, Clark replies, surprising even himself. He feels the Emperor's pain, 10,000 years of holding back annihilation, of watching humanity survive by becoming monstrous. You saved them by hardening them, I get that. But you also taught them that cruelty is sacred. Silence stretches between them, heavy with unspoken history. You do not understand what waits in the dark, the Emperor finally says. The Chaos Gods feed on desire, on belief, on hope, most of all. Clek opens his eyes. Below him, a child stares up, clutching a piece of blue cloth torn from his cape, like a relic. Then maybe it's time someone showed them a kind of hope that doesn't rot, he says. One that doesn't belong to gods. For the first time in millennia, the Emperor hesitates. Across the Imperium, consequences explode outward. Ecclesial worlds riot as sermons lose their grip. Entire regiments refuse exterminatus orders after hearing stories of planets saved without genocide. Space Marines engineered to know, no doubt, begin to question why a stranger embodies the ideals the Imperium abandoned. And then the backlash comes. Chaos adapts faster than tyranny ever could. In the eye of terror, the warp boils as the ruinous powers unite in rare consensus. This being cannot be corrupted. cannot be tempted, cannot be starved, because he does not draw from belief. That makes him an existential threat, so they choose the only remaining option. They will break him. The trap is set. On Armageddon, a war already soaked in legend and blood, orcs mass in numbers unseen, says the beast. Demonic incursions spiked violently. The Imperium declares it a necessary sacrifice world. Superman arrives to save millions and walks straight into a nightmare designed specifically for him. Reality fractures. Warp storms choke out yellow suns. The sky turns the color of old bruise. For the first time since leaving Earth, Clark feels weaker, slower. The air itself seems to resist him. Khorne's champions charge in endless waves. Nurgle's plagues cling even to invulnerable flesh. Tyzinch's illusions twist civilians into weapons. Slaanesh whispers doubt, not temptation. You can't save them all. Superman fights anyway. Hour after hour, day after day. He saves cities, only to watch others fall. He hears every scream, feels every death like a weight on his chest. And when an entire hive city is dragged screaming into the warp despite his efforts, something inside him finally cracks. He screams, not enraged but in grief. The sound rips through the warp like a blade of pure will, obliterating demons by the thousands. For a heartbeat, the Chaos Gods recoil, but the damage is done. Clark Kent hovers above the ruins of Armageddon, shoulders slumped, hands shaking. He has never failed like this, never been this powerless. And the galaxy was waiting to see what a broken god does next. What if the universe finally succeeds in doing the unthinkable, making Superman doubt that hope itself is enough? Armageddon burns beneath him like a wound that will never close. Superman floats above the ruined hive spires, ash drifting around him like snow from a dead sky. His cape is torn, his armor scorched. But it isn't the damage to his body that hurts, it's the silence where millions of voices used to be. His super hearing keeps reaching for them out of instinct, and every time it finds nothing, the absence hits harder than any blow. I should have been faster. He whispers to no one. Below, Imperial forces regroup amid the wreckage. Space Marines kneel among the dead, not in prayer, but in something closer to confusion. They were made for endless war, yet even they are shaken by the sight of a being who fought chaos itself, failed. A Blood Angel's chaplain watches. Superman with a conflicted gaze. If even he cannot save them all, he murmurs, "What hope was ever real?" Those words spread faster than any demonic taint. Across the Imperium, faith fractures into extremes. Some declare Superman a false savior, whose failure proves the Emperor alone must be worshipped without question. Others cling to him harder, insisting that his grief is proof of divinity, that only a true God could mourn mortals so deeply. Both reactions terrify Clark. "This isn't what I wanted," he says aloud, fists tightening. "I didn't come here to replace anyone." But the universe doesn't care what he wanted. The Inquisition seizes its opportunity. A conclave is called in secret, attended by Ordo Malleus, Ordo Heretikus, and representatives of the Adeptus Custodes themselves. The conclusion is unanimous and chilling. Superman's presence destabilizes the Imperium faster than chaos ever could. Not because he fails, because he inspires. A weapon is authorized, one that has not been used since the Horus Heresy, a psychic, Noel's own amplifier, designed to sever a target from all external energies, reality included. Not to kill him, not to cage him. The trap is sprung at Macragge. Reboot. Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, stands at the heart of its return from death, burdened by a galaxy he'd barely He meets Superman, not as an enemy, but as a general confronting an unsolvable variable. "You are everything we were supposed to be," Guilliman admits quietly as the device activates, reality screaming as it folds around Clark. And that is precisely why you cannot be allowed to continue. Superman drops to one knee as the universe presses in on him. The sun dims. His strength bleeds away, not gone, but caged, suffocated. For the first time since Krypton, he feels truly trapped. Guilliman, Clark strains. "This doesn't have to be." "It does," the Primarch replies, pain etched into every word, "because your hope asks humanity to change, and change is more terrifying than extinction." The nullfield locks. Superman is taken. When word spreads that the man of tomorrow has fallen, the galaxy reacts violently. Riots erupt. Worlds rebel. Chaos laughs. The Emperor falls silent once more. His last fragile outreach severed, and deep within a fortress designed to hold gods, Superman sits alone in artificial darkness, stripped of the light that once fueled him. For the first time in this grim dark future, hope is not just wounded, it is imprisoned, and something ancient, patient, and cruel smiles in the warp pickers now. At last, the hero can be broken properly. What if stripping Superman of his power doesn't break him but instead reveals the most dangerous thing the Imperium has ever faced? There is no pain at first. That is what unsettles Clark the most. He sits in the center of a chamber carved from black stone and Nultec, its walls inscribed with sigils, older than the Imperium itself. No sun reaches him, no stars. His senses are muffled, dulled, as if the universe has been wrapped in thick cloth. He cannot hear distant screams anymore. He cannot feel the hum of life across worlds. For the first time since childhood, he is just a man. His heart still beats. His lungs still draw air. But the strength, the flight, the impossible resilience gauge behind layers of technology and will designed to humble gods. He clenches his fists, expecting the familiar surge. Nothing. So this is what you are without the light. A voice says from the shadows. An Inquisitor steps forward, robed in crimson and iron, her eyes cold and sharp. Inquisitor Valeria Caspeordu Herechkos. She studies him not with hatred, but with clinical curiosity. A man who tried to save people, Clark replies hoarsely. Casper smiles thinly. No, a catalyst. He destabilized 10,000 years of carefully maintained fear in less than a month. Do you have any idea how many worlds are burning because they thought mercy was an option? Clark looks up at her, exhausted but unbroken. Then the problem isn't mercy, he says. It's a system that needs people to be afraid to survive. Ship pauses. Just for a second. That, she says quietly, is why you must never be free. Days pass, or weeks. Time blurs without the sun. Interrogations come and go, some psychic, some philosophical, some simply cruel. They try to provoke anger, to extract confession, to prove he is a threat, even without power. They fail. Clark listens. He asks questions. He learns about children turned into soldiers, about planets sterilized to prevent hypothetical corruption, about space marines who no longer remember why humanity was worth protecting, only that it must endure at any cost. And slowly, something changes. The guards linger longer than necessary. An interrogator brings him water without being ordered to. A tech priest hesitates before activating pain protocols, optics flickering with machine spirit uncertainty. Hope, Clark realizes, does not require strength. It only requires someone to refuse to surrender their humanity. On Terra, Gilliman feels the pressure building like a fault line. Reports of unrest multiply. Entire regiments lay down arms rather than fire on civilians chanting a single name. Not that Emperors, Superman single quotes, is meanwhile. In the warp, the Chaos Gods grow uneasy. The Null Prison was meant to silence him, to starve him of relevance. Instead, his example spreads without him. No worship, no psychic amplification. Just stories. That should be impossible. And yet, deep beneath the Imperial Palace, the Emperor stirs again. Faint, strained, but awake enough to feel it. He does not fight like a god, the Emperor realizes. He endures like a man. That is when the impossible happens. The prison alarms scream. Not because Superman is escaping, but because something is coming for him. A breach tears open reality above the fortress. Warp energy flooding in with violent intent. Not a raid, not an invasion, a personal execution. The Chaos Gods have decided that if hope cannot be corrupted, it must be erased. Demon Primarchs descend, and Superman, powerless, steps forward to meet them anyway. What if, when faced with gods of pure destruction, a powerless man chooses to stand anyway, and that choice shakes the universe harder than any punch ever could? The sky above the Null Fortress doesn't just break, it screams reality, peels back like rotting skin as the warp forces its way through. Raw and furious. Sirens wail across the prison complex. Void shields overload. Blackstone fractures under pressures it was never meant to endure. Guards flee. Tech priests chant. Emergency litanies that go unanswered. And from the wound in existence itself, they come. Angron hits first. a meteor of chain blades and hatred, his raw, shaking countenance. Mortarion follows, wings spreading plague and despair, the air dying wherever he passes. Magnus looms last, cyclopean eye blazing with sorcerous fury, warp fire coiling around his staff. Demon Primarchs, living demigods born of betrayal, sustained by chaos itself. They are not here for terror, they are here for one man. Superman feels them before he sees them, not as a threat to his body, but as a suffocating weight of despair pressing against his soul. The Nullfield keeps his powers locked away, but it cannot block fear, it cannot block doubt. Angron laughs as he crashes through the fortress wall, ceramite and stone exploding outward. So, the Red Angel snarls, eyes burning. This is the hope that insults the gods. Clark steps forward, boots scraping against the floor, shoulders squared. He looks impossibly small standing before them, human, fragile, yet he doesn't back away. I'm not here to fight you, Clyce says, voice steady despite the terror clawing at his chest. I'm here because people deserve a future. What? Laughter is wet and hollow. There is no future, the Plague Lord hisses. Only decay, only acceptance. Magnus raises a hand, warp energy crackling. You are an anomaly, he says coldly. You do not belong. And yet, you refuse to kneel. Why? Clark thinks of Earth, of Kansas fields under a yellow sun, of his parents teaching him that doing the right thing matters, even when it costs everything, 'cause someone has to. He answers simply. Angron charges. There is no cinematic clash of titans, no explosion of light. Angron's Chanak slams into Clark's chest and sends him skidding across the chamber like a broken doll. Bones crack, blood spills. Pain floods him in ways he hasn't felt since childhood. He forces himself up anyway. Again, Angron strikes him down. Again, Clark rises. Mortarion's plague eats at his lungs. Magnus flays his mind with visions of worlds he failed to save. Every blow screams the same message. You are nothing without your power. And still Clark stands guards, watching from shattered corridors, freeze in disbelief. This is not a god defending himself. This is a man refusing to give monsters the satisfaction of his surrender. And Terra Gilliman feels it like a punch to the chest. He's still standing, he whispers. Deep within the golden throne, the Emperor's withered fingers twitch. So was I, he remembers. Ones.ang are on lifts Clark by the throat, snarling in triumph. Beg, he growls. Pray to your hope. Clark coughs, blood on his lips, and smiles faintly. I don't pray, he says. I act. Something breaks. Not Clark, the warp. A surge of golden light erupts from within the null chamber, not from the sun, not from the Emperor, not from belief, but from resolve. The null field fractures under a force it was never designed to contain. Hope, not worship, not faith. Choice. The chaos Primarchs recoil as Superman's eyes ignite once more, not with solar fire, but with something quieter, stronger. The light returns, and the universe holds its breath. What if the moment Superman regains his power isn't the birth of a god, but the return of a promise the galaxy desperately tried to forget? The light doesn't explode outward, it unfolds. The null field fractures like glass under impossible pressure, its ancient mechanisms screaming as they fail to comprehend what they were never meant to contain. This isn't solar radiation flooding back into Clark's cells, not yet. This is something deeper, something the warp recoils from instinctively. Choice made flesh. Angron is the first to understand that something has gone terribly wrong. His chain axe grinds to a halt inches from Clark's throat, teeth screeching, as if the weapon itself wants to flee. What are you? The Red Angel snarls. Superman resists not, lifted by power, but by will. His feet leave the ground slowly, deliberately. The blood on his chest stops flowing. Bones knit. His breath steadies. The yellow of a distant star, filtered through layers of warped reality, finally reaches him again. I'm someone who doesn't give up on people, Clark says, even when they give up on themselves. He moves, not fast enough to kill, not hard enough to dominate, just enough. Angron is thrown back through 3 fortress walls, not shattered, but stopped, slammed into reality like a lesson he never learned. Mortarion's plagues evaporate in midair as Superman exhales, dispersing rot with nothing more than clean wind. Magnus launches a storm of warp fire and watchers, in stunned silence as it unravels, stripped of meaning, reduced to harmless light. This is impossible. Magnus breathes. You draw no power from belief, no pact, no god. Superman meets the Cyclops' gaze. I don't need one. Above terror, the warp convulses. For the first time since the dark age of technology, the Imperium reacts not with hunger but with fear. Demons falter across 1,000 battlefields. Possessions fail. Warp storms flicker and thin, as if reality itself is remembering how to resist. The chaos gods rage. Khorne bellows for blood. That will not come. Nurgle feels decay halt where Superman passes. Tezent sees futures collapsing into fewer, brighter paths. Slaanesh feels something unbearable, irrelevance. The Emperor awakens fully, not standing, not healed, but present. You are not a god, the Emperor says into Clark's mind, voice vast and fragile all at once. And that terrifies them. Clark floats amid the ruin of the fortress, the 3 demon Primarchs regrouping warily. He feels his full strength now, but also the weight of every choice ahead. I don't want your throne, Clark replies. I don't want worship. I don't even want to rule. Then what do you want? He looks down at the guards, the soldiers, the ordinary humans staring at him like they're seeing daylight for the first time. I want them to have a future where surviving doesn't mean becoming monsters. The Emperor is silent for a long time. Then we are aligned, he finally says. Even if my Imperium is not. Guilliman arrives at the fortress moments later, teleportation flare lighting the ruins. He takes in the scene, the retreating demon Primarch, the shattered Nulltech Superman hovering calmly where gods just stood. You could destroy us, Guilliman says quietly. You could end the Imperium by force. Clark descends until his boots touch the ground. And prove you were right. To fear me, he asks. No. Change that lasts has to be chosen. The demon Primarchs retreat into the warp knot, defeated, but shaken. For the first time since the heresy, chaos has learned something it hates. This universe has found a variable it cannot corrupt. But Clark knows. The war isn't over, because the hardest battle isn't against gods, it's against the civilization, built on despair. And now every power in the galaxy is watching him decide what comes next. What if Superman refuses to become humanity's ruler, and instead forces the galaxy to confront the question it's been avoiding for 10,000 years? The fortress smolders behind them as Guilliman and Clark stand amid the wreckage, the air still humming with the aftershock of impossible events. Sirens wail in the distance, but no one dares interrupt. Custodes watch from afar, hands on guardian, spears, uncertain whether they are witnessing salvation or sedition. Guilliman breaks the silence first. You've destabilized every power structure in the Imperium, he says, not accusing, stating fact. Worlds are rebelling. Priests are losing authority. The Inquisition is fractured. If you speak openly now, civil war will follow. Clark folds his arms, cape settling behind him like a calm horizon after a storm. And if I stay silent, nothing changes. The Primarch exhales slowly. You don't understand. This empire survives because it believes there is no alternative. Clef looks up at the sky, where the warp still churns uneasily. That's exactly why there has to be one. Across the galaxy, the ripples spread. A Space Marine chapter on the edge of Segmentum, Ultimo, refuses an order to cleanse a civilian world, citing Superman's example. On Hive Primus, workers lay down tools not in revolt, but in mourning, demanding food be distributed instead of hoarded for tithes. Even among the Adeptus Sororitas whispers circulate. If faith is meant to inspire virtue, why does it require so much blood? Chaos strikes back where it can, but something is shifted. Their victories feel thinner, less inevitable. Every time Superman appears, sometimes only briefly, sometimes only to rescue and live, demon incursions weaken. Not because he kills them all, but because the people facing them don't break as easily anymore. Hope has become armor. The High Lords convene an emergency council. Half demand Superman's execution, the other half fear attempting it again. An exterminatus order is drafted, then quietly shelved. No one wants to be remembered as the one who fired first. Clerk refuses titles, refuses command. He appears on worlds long written off as lost, helps stabilize them, then leaves governance to the people themselves. Some fail, some fall back into tyranny. He doesn't intervene every time. That restraint unnerves everyone. You could force peace, Guilliman tells him during one rare private meeting. You choose not to. Clark nods. Because peace imposed by power isn't peace. It's just another cage. The Emperor watches all of this in silence. He feels humanity changing in subtle ways, slow, fragile, imperfect. Exactly the kind of change he once abandoned as too risky. "You're undoing my work," the Emperor says at last. Clark doesn't argue. "Maybe, or maybe I'm finishing what you started before. You decided fear was safer than faith in people." A long pause. "I was wrong about many things," the Emperor admits. "But if this future collapses, trillions will die." Clef meets the weight of that truth without flinching. They already are. In the warp, the Chaos Gods snarl and plot. They cannot kill Superman easily. They cannot corrupt him at all. So they turn their gaze outward to the fragile hope spreading in his wake. If they cannot break the symbol, they will break what he's trying to save. And Clark Kent feels it a coming storm that will test not his strength, but his faith in humanity itself. What if the ultimate battle isn't against gods or monsters, but against the very system that taught humanity to despair? Superman stands on the bridge of a conquered battleship, a vessel salvaged from Armageddon's ruin. Around him, survivor soldiers, civilians, and even a handful of disillusioned space marines gather in cautious curiosity. The galaxy is watching, and the Imperium itself teeters on the edge of collapse. Not because of force, but because of example. "Why are you helping them?" A young Adeptus Mechanicus initiates, asks, voice trembling. "They'll never thank you. The system won't allow it." Clark turns to face her, eyes soft but steady. "Because it's the right thing to do. And one day, enough people will believe it too. The war isn't over. Armies still march under the banners of blind obedience. Hive worlds starve. Worlds, under inquisitorial sanction, tremble under the weight of fear. But for the first time, when people cry out in the streets, someone listens and someone acts. He moves from system to system, planet to planet, refusing to be worshipped, refusing to rule. He rebuilds hospitals, teaches the people how to defend themselves without becoming monsters, and inspires soldiers to remember the humanity in themselves. Every action spreads like wildfire. Hope isn't a superpower, it's contagious. And the galaxy begins to fight back, not under Superman's command, but in response to him. PDF units start protecting civilians from corrupted commissars. Space Marine squads question executions. Rogue traders abandon predatory profiteering, seeing the price of apathy. Even the ecclesiarchy begins to whisper reforms in secret, fearing rebellion more than heresy. But there are consequences. Hulbrecht, the Inquisitor who once tried to cage him, now organizes assassination squads, shadow fleets, and psychic killers, all to restore control. Armies loyal to the Imperium's old hierarchy converge on worlds where hope has taken root, determined to snuff it out before it spreads. Superman faces them without hesitation, but differently than before. He doesn't strike to kill, he doesn't destroy fleets. He shields civilians, disarms the aggressors, and uses his strength to enforce choice, not domination. It is a terrifyingly delicate balance, and for the first time, he begins to realize the true weight of hope. "This isn't like fighting a villain," Clark mutters to himself, while floating over a burning city. "It's fighting an entire way of thinking." And just as he begins to understand, the warp shifts violently. The Chaos Gods, enraged by the spread of hope they cannot consume, send their deadliest agents, yet warp entities that are neither fully mortal nor fully demonic, embodiments of despair designed to crush the will itself. Superman descends into the heart of a city under siege. Children cry in the streets. Soldiers hesitate. The warp entities coil like black storms above him. Every instinct screams that he is outmatched. But then he sees it. Ordinary humans standing beside him, refusing to run, refusing to give up. They are frightened, yes, but they fight in small ways that make a difference. A dock worker throws debris to block a rampaging demon. A soldier uses a sniper rifle not to kill, but to protect civilians. Each act of courage ripples, amplifying the one who started it all. Clef steps forward, no longer carrying the weight of expectation. He carries the reminder that hope, when shared, becomes unstoppable, not because it is invincible, but because it inspires others to fight. Even in the face of impossible odds, the warp entities scream in frustration as they find themselves opposed, not by a god, but by a galaxy refusing to despair. And in that scream, Superman realizes the most important lesson of all. No matter how grim the universe, no matter how relentless the darkness, Hope is never truly defeated, as long as someone chooses to act. What if the final act of heroism isn't defeating gods or monsters, but proving that even in the Grimdark, humanity can choose to rise? The galaxy trembles beneath the weight of countless wars, yet a new movement is stirring. Planets once written off as doomed rally, inspired by stories of Superman's deeds. Soldiers trained to obey without question hesitate before executing orders. Civilians take up arms not for conquest, but for survival and justice. Even the ecclesiarchy whispers reform, afraid to lose the loyalty of the people. Superman moves quietly through it all, no longer a savior arriving from the sky, but a guide walking among the people. He teaches, protects, encourages, not to replace leadership, but to awaken it. And slowly, subtly, a network of hope forms, stretching across sectors, weaving humanity back together from the inside out. But the cost is still immense. Armageddons, cities lie in ruin, millions have died, and the Chaos Gods, wounded in their pride and infuriated by the spread of hope, conspire again. Their agents, more subtle now, begin to infiltrate systems where Superman cannot reach. Corruption, fear, and despair creep back quietly, a reminder that victory in this universe is never permanent. Superman confronts one such agented demon of subtlety that has infiltrated an Adeptus Administratum world. Unlike the towering Primarchs before, this one whispers doubt, turns neighbor against neighbor. Fans distrust among those who survived. Clefs listens, studies, and speaks. He does not destroy, he does not punish. He reminds the people of the choices they can still make. And in a ripple of bravery and unity, the demon is expelled, not killed, but powerless, as its power relies entirely on despair. Everywhere he goes, Superman leaves the same lesson. Hope is not magic, it is choice, it is action, it is refusing to let the darkness dictate what must happen. The Imperium, decades, centuries, and millennia of rigid fear begins to bend, ever so slightly, under that invisible weight. Even the Emperor watches from the Golden Throne, sensing a tide he cannot control. "You are not my soldier," he tells Clark silently, "and yet you do more than any of my creations could." Clark smiles softly. "I'm not your soldier," he replies. "I'm theirs." The Chaos Gods howl in frustration from the Imperium. The null prison technology lies in ruins. Imperial authorities scramble, and across millions of light years, humans make a single, dangerous, audacious choice to act for themselves. Finally, standing amid a reconstructed hive world, Superman looks to the horizon. Children play. Soldiers train with purpose. Priests preach moderation. It is far from perfect, but it is alive. It is hope. "I can't fix everything," Clark murmurs, "but I can show them it's possible." And in that moment, the galaxy realizes something terrifying to the forces of despair. Hope is not a thing to be crushed. It is a living, breathing force, multiplying wherever someone refuses to surrender. In the Grimdark universe of Warhammer 40K, where despair has ruled for 10,000 years, the Last Son of Krypton stands not as a god, but as proof that even the smallest light can shine against endless darkness. And for the first time, the universe remembers what it once forgot. That tomorrow is not predetermined, and hope can survive, even here. The end.